Thank you, Dr. Sharma, and my greetings to the Baroness whenever you send a message to her. Thank you to John Fagan. I notice that the text talks about new precision breeding techniques compatible with international definition. First, GMO in the Convention on Biological Diversity, which is called LMO, and in the Biosafety Protocol, the Cartagena Biosafety Protocol, which is the international law, which the UK is still governed by. It might have left Europe, but it has not left the international regulatory system. And biosafety is an international regulatory system. In addition to that, the word GMO means genetic modification. It did not specify how the modification happens. Yes, it is true that in the first generation of modification, genes were added from outside, largely Bt toxin genes or herbicide tolerant genes, usually single genes, with antibiotic resistance markers, with viral promoters. But genetic modification is modifying the genome. And I think the reason the Parliamentary Group on Indian Traditional Knowledge Systems is so important is because now contemporary science is waking up to the knowledge that Ayurveda has worked and evolved 5,000 years ago, that living systems are self-organized complex systems, interconnected in hundreds and hundreds of ways. One gene does not lead to one trait. Each structure, each part is related to every other part. And this then means that we have to think very, very clearly about genetic modification at the genetic level. The word new precision breeding techniques is wrong scientifically, both because it is not precise and because it is not breeding. I was just looking at the etymological dictionary for the word breeding: to bring to birth, to procreate, to cherish, to keep, to come into being, to beget. Now, when you edit a genome, you're not doing any of this. When you do breeding, you are working with living plants, you are working with living animals, and you're working with the whole genome. And the point about living systems is because they are self-organized, when the whole genome is crossed with another whole genome, there are systems, regulatory systems, that prevent harm from creeping in. I mentioned the international treaty, and the UK cannot exit from this. I think the obsession with Brexit should stop, and UK should recognize if it's not part of EU regulation, it must still respect international laws. The international laws on biosafety protocol, as I mentioned, cover GMOs. And all scientific literature is admitting that genetic transformation, including gene editing, creates GMOs. But it isn't just the regulatory definition. It is also the scientific experience. So the illusion, I've done my PhD in the foundations of quantum theory, and my basic training is on non-separation. That's why I so appreciate Indian knowledge systems, because they always talk about the connection between our food and our health, between Prakriti and Purush, between the planet and our bodies, and the interconnection between this pandemic and how we are growing food and how we are invading into forests and the chronic diseases that increase the mortality. It is so well known now also in contemporary science and independent research. we were told one gene leads to one trait. And this was going to be a precision technology at the first generation of genetic engineering. So there was going to be a herbicide tolerant gene, you could spray Roundup, and there'd be no weed ever again. We were told we can put a Bt toxin gene into a plant and we'd never have a pest again. The ads used to say, you'll never have to spray. What happened? They forgot about evolution, and they forgot that the weeds will evolve resistance to Roundup and glyphosate. And now half of America's farmlands are overtaken by superweeds. So now they're bringing dicamba, which is causing drift and destroying farms around, or the Bt, which is supposed to control pests. The Bt cotton was introduced into India, and I won't take time of talking about it, but I've done lots of studies. And the bollworm, which it was supposed to prevent, has become resistant. And farmers are not just stuck with a crop that is having lower yield, they're having to spend more money on pesticides. That was the first generation of GMOs. This new generation of GMOs, the gene editing, which is being called new precision breeding, is not at all precise. And it's a very young, it's a baby tool. It's a baby technology. Just 5 or 6 years ago, they tried to start treating life with its complexity and self-organization as if it was a word program where you could cut and paste and nothing else would happen. Here is Jennifer Doudna, one of the inventors of gene editing. And she says, I guess I worry about a couple of things. I think there's a sort of potential of unintended consequences of gene editing in people. Yeah? That's the founder herself. Within 2 years, a paper published in Science said that for one gene editing, more than 1,500 single nucleotide mutations and more than 100 larger deletions and insertions took place. Because living systems are interconnected, doing one thing to one part has implications. And when, in the illusion that it's precision and you know everything, you think you can just cut and paste, and you're not looking at these unintended consequences, the consequences can be huge. But more recently, just in the last month, 3 papers came out about gene editing of embryos. Attempts to edit out a single gene resulted in large-scale unintended DNA deletions and rearrangements in the surrounding sequences. This is a restraining order. Scientists are saying this. This is a restraining order for gene editing. A month ago, 3 papers. And most recently, they tried to make hornless animals, delete the horn. Of course, in India, we love the horns of our bulls and our cows. And when we do Pongal and we do celebration, we decorate the horns. We love the horns. But this attempt at hornless animals, the company that worked on it thought they were absolutely precise. They said, we know exactly where the gene should go, and we put it in the exact location. This is Recombinetics, the company. But then the FDA, the Food and Drug Organization, and this is international standards, FDA looked at the genome. And when they looked at the genome, they found that a bull named Buri had a stretch of bacterial DNA, including a gene conferring antibiotic resistance. Half of the offspring of Buri would have been transmitted with this antibiotic resistance, unintended. Alison van Neumann, who is at the University of California and was part of doing this work, has said, it is a novel DNA. It is settled, this is a GMO. These are the scientists who are working in this field. And yet there are those who would like to imagine that they can keep denying science, they can keep denying regulation. Interestingly, after the European Court of Justice decision that gene editing is a GMO, Bayer, which has bought Monsanto, said it was widening the definition of genetic modification to include gene editing. And they're going to treat countries that don't have this regulation as a dumping ground. But the dumping ground will also mean that England is going to lose its relationships of trade with countries that care about the quality of food, that care about what you're eating and care about their regulations. United States had thought it would not regulate, but it could not export to Europe. If England thinks it will not regulate, it'll lose its European markets, which is its biggest market. But the final point I want to make is that this is not breeding. As I mentioned, breeding is with real organisms, whole genomes. I have been saving seeds. Now, as I say, I'm trained in physics, but for the last 33 years, I've been saving seeds, working with seeds. And I live in beautiful Doon Valley. We have lychee trees. I'm locked in where I was, the home where I was born and where I grew up. And the lychees my mother planted are before hybrid breeding evolved. And the lychees she planted have flavor, have taste, and when we put them away, we can eat them a month. Day before, friends who've grown hybrid lychee, brought lychee, fat, pure water, the lychee has gone, the flavor has gone, the taste has gone, and 2 days after we put it in the fridge, they are rotting. So breeding means you evolve for quality, especially when it comes to agriculture and food. You evolve for taste. You evolve for nutrition. You breed for resistance and resilience to pests, and now with climate change, to climate change. None of this can be done by treating properties as lying in one gene and then inaccurately using imprecise technologies to introduce hazards. We have been working with participatory and evolutionary breeding to deal with climate change. These are the research directions that the UK needs to be following, not an outmoded, obsolete paradigm of a mechanistic reductionist science that has absolutely not delivered anything but disease. We now need to evolve the basic shared paradigm of the new cutting-edge sciences of complexity and living systems and the ancient learnings of systems like Ayurveda. I'm so glad I was able to join you for this very important discussion you've organized, and I hope you will be able to move England through this parliamentary discussion to the next level rather than backwards.